Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm the Vice President of Programs for 6th District PTA, and I'm your tech host this evening. If you have any questions for us, technical questions, please go ahead and put that into the chat, and we'll try to support you throughout the evening. We do not have an interpreter for Spanish this evening, unfortunately, and you are all automatically on mute as this is a webinar. If you have any questions for Dr. Khanzode, you can put it in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen. If you've dialed in, you should be able to find a way to raise your hand, and then we'll see that and we'll be able to let you speak and ask your question then. But we'll hold questions until the end, so go ahead and put your questions in there and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce Anna Thompson, our parliamentarian, to introduce our guest for this evening.
Good evening. My name is Anna Thompson, 6th District PTA parliamentarian. On behalf of 6th District PTA, I would like to welcome you to the 4th evening of our Parenting in a Pandemic speaker series. Tonight, we are pleased to introduce Dr. Leena Khanzode, who will be speaking to us on the topic of mental health and distance learning for K-12 students. Dr. Leena Khanzode is a child and adolescent psychiatrist practicing in Los Altos. Her medical school training and residency in General Psychiatry was completed in Mumbai, India, before immigrating to the United States in 2001. She completed her Adult Psychiatry residency and Child and Adolescent Psychiatry fellowship from Stanford University and graduated in 2009, and is also a member of the Adjunct Clinical Faculty in the Child Psychiatry Department at Stanford. Dr. Leena Khanzode is also president of a nonprofit organization, Taarika Foundation, which focuses on mental health in children and adolescents. I'd like to turn the time over to Dr. Leena Khanzode.
Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate that kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining on a weeknight evening. I bet this was not easy to, make time for. Hopefully you've settled in your kids and done dinner, or maybe you're hoping to get done with this talk early and do that later. So without further ado, let me pull up my slides. So, as Anna mentioned, the topic is mental health and distance learning, and I'm honored to be presenting it to parents from the 6th District PTA. Sounds like you guys are from different schools, and I'm really delighted to share some of the knowledge I have gathered about mental health issues and what we can do during this pandemic. So, really quickly, I think Anna already mentioned to you guys about me. So coming to the topic, we all know that this pandemic has not been easy for any one of us, including kids, right? I think it's particularly hard for children and teens to, have this big change in their life. We were all blindsided by this in early March and had to go shelter in place, and the schools moved to online learning. And then there's been a lot since then. Like there are families who are trying to keep up with their finances. Some of us have lost jobs. There is a lot of juggling that parents have to do right now with managing their work and also helping their kids to get comfortable with online school. So a lot's happened. A lot of changes have happened, and we have tried to adapt ourselves, and maybe a little bit better than we were a few months ago, but by any means, this hasn't been easy. So in terms of the emotional impact of COVID-19 quarantine, there was a survey that was done actually for children and adolescents in Italy and Spain earlier this year. And they kind of were interested in seeing what parents reported about the impact of the quarantine on children. And so 85.7% of parents reported changes in child's emotion and behaviors during the quarantine. And the different things that they reported were difficulty concentrating, 76.6%, as you see, loneliness being the another kind of thing that they had kids report to them a lot. Irritability. So happy, kind of very playful kids started to show a lot more irritability in their behavior, and then worries, of course, about how this is going to go, how long this will go on for, and what their future looks like. There's a few other research studies that I would like to talk about. So in another study where they, looked at teens, they found that 7 out of 10 kids reported mental health issues, more than 50% reported anxiety, 43% depression, and 45% felt more stressed out or more stressed than usual. And a more recent survey that was done in New York, 351 American parents were the ones who reported their findings on this survey. And they also said that there was a decline in child's emotional well-being. 68% saw behavioral issues rising, and then also in equal numbers saw physical health issues due to decreased activities and exercise. So, we've been kind of forced to stay indoors, and that definitely has had its impact not only on our physical health but also on emotional health. So a quick kind of blurb about the distance learning and its challenges. I think there are more challenges than I have listed on this slide, but I want to just quickly go over those before we talk about how we can make this experience a little bit more easy for the kids, and at the same time, making sure we are taking care of their mental health. So, clearly the first and the foremost challenge with this is lack of interpersonal interaction with teachers and other students. So, this is the number one thing I've been hearing from all the kids I work with. And they basically say the worst thing is that I don't get to have in-person interaction. And it's super interesting, we are, raising some digital age kids, in the current world, and they are understanding the value of in-person interaction through this. At least, I see that as a little silver lining in this dark cloud. But, that has been the number one thing that they have been missing the most, that there is no, interpersonal interaction. It's not the same on Zoom. They really wish that they could see their friends or see the teacher and learn in the classroom setting. And then, for some families who are struggling to keep up with the financial demands and, and the kind of other consequences the pandemic has brought in their lives, often there's lack of access for devices and internet, connection to do remote learning. So that's a real issue. And I think a lot of school districts are working with those families to provide them with those kind of services. But, that's a real situation we need to be also aware of. And, no matter how much they are trying their best to keep that routine and structure for the kids in the online school format, nevertheless, it's not the same. I feel like all the accountability is now, on the students or their parents for younger kids particularly. So it's like, yes, they can share the logins and send you the Zoom links. The teachers can post stuff on the Google Classroom or whichever system they're using, Schoology for high schools, I guess. But, it's finally you are accountable to get there, trace that assignment and get it going and re-upload it and whatnot. So there is a lot more accountability, and it's more like, now you have to, take care of it all. And then, of course, for younger kids, it goes on parents to really help them do that. And then, a lot of what I'm also hearing from a lot of the kids I work with is that they're really struggling to understand the content in the online format, and teachers are really trying their best. So it's not like they are not doing their job. They are trying their best. Of course, this is a change for them. They were not trained to do, online teaching. So they've had to have their own learning, and training happen for this. But nevertheless, the attention span, the motivation to stay focused on an in an online school kind of setup for 6-8 hours, at a stretch, even with small breaks in between, does not seem like it's the best way to really understand the concepts. And so that's another challenge with this. And then, this is certainly true for some of the high school kids I work with. They've been like, even though this is such a hard situation and everybody understands it, unfortunately, there's been no change in the expectations by teachers or parents. Even though they understand this is hard, we can't stay motivated, we can't stay focused. The expectation is still to get good grades and still to worry about college applications down the line and whatnot, right? So, I definitely want to talk about that in my presentation later. And then, like I was mentioning, the pandemic has had its own impact individually on different families, whether it is parents losing job versus somebody losing their loved one due to this, illness, um, other types of challenges of staying in a small place and figuring out, the right space and place for people to be able to do the learning and do their jobs. So there's a lot of personal life circumstances that also affect every student's life that certainly makes this type of format of learning much more challenging. So, like I said, I mean, there's many more things in this, but there's not much, I guess, we can do other than trying to find a way to work with this, which is what I think we all have been doing. And so my number one tip for supporting your child with distance learning is to really work on setting some realistic expectations, understanding some of the challenges and the nuances, especially in the beginning of the year, when it all came very suddenly. It was a very new thing and kids had to switch gears. And the first few months, during spring semester, I think nobody was prepared for this. So those months kind of went in the drain. Kind of, they didn't do much of learning and not much had happened, and the schools had let down their expectations. But since the fall time, since this new school year, I think they are back on track with the expectations. And as a parent, what can I do to help them with that? So as much as, of course, our goal, a primary goal for sending kids to school is that they should learn. Unfortunately, a lot of the times what I see in my work is that the expectation tends to be much more heavy in the area of academics. There is a lot of emphasis and focus on you need to learn and get good grades, and the grades become like a way of measuring the learning. And so given current circumstances with the number of challenges that online learning brings in, I think it's important to keep that in mind that, maybe the grades won't reflect that. Maybe your child is not able to do as well as they were doing in the in-person classroom setting, but that does not mean they are not learning. Like, I think focusing on that they are learning more than just looking at grades as outcome would be a good way to kind of set some, reset some of those expectations. And then, setting some realistic goals. I mean, this is, I think, particularly true for the younger kids who are in elementary school, who, need a lot of support and assistance, and really taking a step back from like, oh, is my child like able to do the 2-digit multiplication or division, and why is that not happening? And versus, looking at, okay, are they getting some basic concepts, understood, and are at least trying to learn that? So, even, of course, I mean, I'm not saying you don't let them meet the benchmarks for that year, but, definitely giving them a little leeway and working with them, to slowly achieve that goal. There is still time. It's not like, first or second grade is like, this is their final, year to learn this. If this year is unfortunately not working out as well, we could find a way to get them caught up, or we could, spend some time when when you have the break and bandwidth and time to do it. Um, you know, amongst all of this, I feel like the most important one is to maintain parent-child relationship. I know these are stressful times, and as parents, we are juggling multiple balls. You're trying to, work and take care of the family, making sure you're next to your child, sometimes logging them in for class for younger kids who need more assistance, navigating through the systems, to communicating with their teachers, keeping track of their assignments, cooking, getting the meals on table. I mean, there's a lot that's on the parents. Um, and often in that, like extra responsibilities that we have now, we do get overwhelmed and often irritable, and that may become a source of conflict between parent and child often. And so keeping that in mind and keeping things into perspective, and if you are truly overwhelmed and feeling like this is something you need help with, taking a step back and asking for that and expressing them that I'm stressed today, I'm overwhelmed, I'm busy with this work meeting or this project, and really talking openly about your emotions, and helping them understand it's not them, it's just you are struggling today and you are having a bad day. I think that is important to kind of do, so your relationship with them is not too much affected. Because I think one of the things I'm seeing in my work is that, because of course we are forced to spend more time now with our family, which we were not so used to before. Everybody got a little break from each other. Now that we are all cooped in, we have to find a way to get along, and that's not easy. But at the same time, I think it's important to work towards keeping that intact, because the biggest foundation thing that we know from research studies is that for you to expect compliance from your child, the biggest predictor or the biggest foundation block is your relationship with your child. So if that is decent, I'm not saying it has to be perfect, there's not such a thing as a perfect relationship, but if that's a place where you can have this open communication and talk openly about things and concerns, and allow your child to do the same, that can really help them, and get the desired compliance or desired changes in their behavior that you're hoping for. um, again, this kind of resonates with my earlier kind of point, is like, focus on their adaptability to online learning than grades, like, giving them the benefit for the doubt that they are working through a new system. Taking tests online was not something they did before. Maybe they did paper pencil tests, and this is a different system they are navigating. So even though they may know the content, they may not do as well during the online test, and that's okay. Yeah, it was just because this was something they were adapting to, or they didn't manage their time well, or whatever that was. So not getting mad at them and blaming them for that, but working through that and appreciating the effort they are putting in. And then certainly one, I guess, another kind of silver lining that I feel like online school has brought in is it has kind of forced the kids to be more organized in some ways, because you have to navigate through different tabs and systems, and to keep track of your classes and different Zoom links or whatnot, like so this is a really great skill set for them to build. And I think that's another great learning that's happening for them to appreciate, or to really feel like you are able to help them do that. Like, this is really going to help them be more organized later on in the future jobs, or colleges, or wherever they go, because they are learning some really key skills. And then focus on their self-regulation and social skills. So I know with online format, their interaction with friends is very different. I know it's very difficult for them to have any kind of interaction, even though they are sometimes put in breakout rooms for group projects and whatnot. What I hear is that it's not the same. It's not as similar as when you are in an in-person class, sitting in a group and chatting and being able to like socialize. So this could be a time where if the academics has to go take a little back seat, maybe I can focus on some other life skills that will be crucial and important for them in the future, which is really what in the long run kind of it boils down to, having good interpersonal social skills and self-regulation skills. So the question I get asked usually is like, how do I teach that in this kind of setup? How do I teach them to be social and self-regulate themselves? Because there are many situations now because of increased stress that pandemic has brought in our lives. We are all getting frustrated easily. We're having our own emotional moments. And so how do I, do that myself, and how do I teach that to my child? So, one thing we know, I think this is not something new I'm sharing with you. We all are role models for our parents, for our kids, whether we like it or not. I mean, that's kind of something that happens, the day you become a parent. So your child, even though you're not consciously sometimes sitting down and teaching them stuff, they are watching you and they are learning from how you are dealing with stuff in your day-to-day life. And that's a lot of teaching for them that they get some learning from. So conscious modeling to teach social skills. So if you are trying to show to them that you are picking up a phone, and trying to call a friend and checking on them, or you're sending messages, wishing people, happy holidays, or on their birthday or things like that, so that allows them to also see, and they will be able to do the same, and you can encourage them to do the same. And then other skills like taking turns, perspective taking, and being flexible. So even in your small family unit, if you are let's say sitting for dinner, you can come up with a kind of a list of chores that everybody's going to help with the dinner today. And so while somebody takes turns to set up the table, somebody's washing the dishes today, somebody's helping with cleaning up, things like that. So you can again model these things, and that gives them a sense of this is like a group project. And just like how we work on our group projects, this is how we do, you kind of have this flavor of how I can take turns and I can put myself in other person's shoe, that empathy and perspective taking, okay, let me see how this person is feeling right now, and showing some flexibility than being stuck and being rigid. So that's, I think, certainly something, we can do in our day-to-day life activities as well, and show them. In terms of self-regulation skills, let me first, define what self-regulation, means. It's one of the definitions that I came across that made more sense to me is the act of managing attitudes, feelings, and behaviors to enable goal-directed actions necessary for success in school. And so this is, of course, I picked the one that's more appropriate for the academic, the school-related topic that we are talking about. But again, it's clearly talking about working on your thoughts, attitude, feelings, and behavior. And so, I tell parents to talk about your experience at work during the day. So even though you are, of course, working virtually, you may be still working with your team, and tell your kids about what happened at your work and how you guys were able to encourage other person, or how you were able to share your feelings, or when somebody else shared their feelings, you were being an active listener and you validated their feelings. And so those are the things, even sharing stories like that. If you've read something, you can share that. If you have a personal life experience from your workday or other circumstances, you can share that. So even that is a way to teach them that, oh yeah, when this happened, my mom handled it this way, so maybe I can do the same next time when I have a little kind of conflict with my friend, maybe, or whatever, right? So that is a nice way to kind of impart some of these skills within the constraints we have right now. And then, we know that we are able to regulate better if we get, good self-care. So including getting good sleep, good nutrition, relaxation and breaks in between. And then I'm a big proponent of mindfulness and mindfulness exercises. In fact, I will be emailing you a handout of a few exercises that you can do with your kids, some fun, easy ones. I haven't quite emailed it to Anna or Dawn, but I will do that. And I think those have been well received before in my other talks. Um, you know, in current unprecedented, uncertain times, mindfulness is really the best way to, you know, deal with the situation. Being in that present moment, being grateful for, whatever you have in this moment, and not, getting too far ahead, really can help you to, find that balance and regulate yourself. So that certainly is a very big, thing that we can learn and also teach our kids. So for younger kids, I think we know that most younger kids demonstrate any negative behaviors or problematic behaviors when they are not getting positive attention, as we call it. And when I say positive attention, it means that you're giving them attention for just being them, right? Like, so generally what happens is, for parents, we take certain behaviors for granted, and we say, so what, he was supposed to say please, so he did say please to his brother before, he asked for a cup of water, or they thanked somebody, or they appreciated a mom for the dinner she cooked, or whatever. So I think giving them that, attention for things, even though you I've taught them, so big deal, they did that or they said that. I think it's important to do that, so they get that positive attention from you, so they can, be fulfilled with that attention, so they don't have to necessarily go and do negative behaviors to get that attention. And so in a distance learning context, I would say, you know once, I mean, I'm sure the kids are smart, and digital age kids have figured out how to do their online school by now, but you can still take a moment to sit with your child intermittently throughout the school day, as much possible. Again, if you're working, and if you have any windows in between, you can certainly try to do that. So you're kind of just like checking in and giving a little focused attention, and making sure they are staying on track with the appropriate behavior. Help them pick some preferred break activities in between classes. And I specifically say, at least for younger kids, avoid using screen time as an activity for breaks. I mean, it's also for older kids, but we'll come to the teens. I know that it's a challenge often to get them off the screens, but younger kids, especially because they still listen to you, they are able to enjoy other activities. It's really important to come up with a menu list and say, okay, today, when you have break, would you like to take your jump rope and do that, or go on the trampoline instead, or go take a little lap around the backyard, or or have a little snack, or whatever that might be. So encouraging them to not use a screen again to get a break from a big screen. So that's really important, just to minimize the impact of excessive screen use. We know that can also lead to more attentional issues, and some anxiety, depression issues, particularly in older kids. So that's a whole different kind of conversation to have. But even otherwise, the Zoom fatigue, or the screen fatigue, or the blue light that's constantly you're getting exposed to, that affects your release of the sleep hormone melatonin, and impacts your sleep and quality of sleep. So there are a number of reasons to really encourage them to try and stay away from screens when they don't have to. And so and again, teaching them also other ways to find that peace and happiness with relaxation and mindfulness. Um, Another quick tip, I'm going to go over this very quickly. I'm sure you guys already probably do this, is to, definitely collaborate with the teachers to make sure they are working with your child. So, keeping in perspective that this is also a new situation for your teachers, being empathetic and understanding their challenges, respecting their boundaries, and asking them what their preferred way of communication is. So you are, communicating appropriately, and then definitely email, if the email tends to be often a preferred communication method for a lot of teachers, so email them if you're seeing challenges in your particular child with online learning, or if your child already has some other learning challenges. So really staying ahead and having that open communication and asking for extra support, telling them what's working, what's not working. If there are family circumstances that demand extra support for the child, then certainly also letting teacher and the school know that, so they can provide extra support. So, I know when it comes to online school and distance learning, the focus is certainly, like I said, as a parent myself, of course, your primary focus tends to be academic, focus, like you want your child to learn and get good grades and move to the next class with more knowledge and capabilities. But this year has been an unusual year, like I mentioned, so of course trying our best to giving them that academic experience in whichever way we are all striving for that, and hopefully it's happening. But definitely also keeping in mind that their emotional and mental health is equal, if not more important, because only when you are well physically and mentally can you achieve all the other goals in your life, right? So really reminding yourself about raising that whole child we talk about. It's not just about excelling in academics or in a sport or one particular extracurricular activity. It's about how resilient your child is. This year has been challenging, but it's teaching us a lot of resilience. And even though these kids are having a lot of difficult times, they are becoming resilient by the day, because they had to adapt so much, right? And so for all age groups, but particularly for younger kids, maintaining a normal routine, because everything else outside of the house may not be super normal. Their life is, the normalcy has gone away. Their life is, a little like unpredicted or unpredictable right now. But one thing that you can keep constant is the routine. So particularly younger kids really do well if they have this consistency in the routine, and so do older. So I don't want to think middle and high school kids shouldn't do that, but that gives a sense of normalcy and security, and it really makes them feel more safe. And so also reassuring them that yes, these are tough times, but we all are safe, and we are well. um, Encouraging routines and healthy habits for them as well, and then practicing active listening. So particularly for middle school and high school kids, they start to communicate little less and less as they get older. So whenever they are talking to you, take that as an opportunity to listen to them, even though they may be talking about a show or a game or something that you may not have interest in, or you but that's your window to get your foot in the door. That's the way to show them that you care, and showing them that you're listening to them, and if they are having any emotional experiences they are wanting to share, like validating those experiences and saying, yeah, if I were you, I would have felt this way. And if there is any learning and any tip and anything you want to teach, of course you do that. So I don't say like you don't do that. But you, first thing is to listen and validate their feelings. Yes, I understand you are finding online school hard, or I understand you haven't seen your friends and it's very, very difficult. and then let's see how can we make this slightly better. What can be a few different things we could do about this? Um, and then, really paying close attention to their behavioral changes. So often, kids, unlike adults, don't show symptoms of depression or anxiety very, quickly, or they are not super apparent. Often with adults, often we see a big change. With kids, it may take months for them, or sometimes even a year or two before parents realize often that, oh, they had been, dealing with some anxiety or depression symptoms. So really being attuned to their behavioral changes, if they are, withdrawing themselves more, and they're not interacting, and their motivation is down, if they are not turning in their school work, they are not, listening, they're more irritable than usual. So unlike adults, where depression presents more as sadness of mood, in teens it presents more as irritability, which is, a hallmark. Like they may be just crank, cranky and grumpy for every little thing. So they tend to be little bit of, like that at that age, more moody and little bit grumpy. But I think there is a fine line, and often parents miss that. If you're noticing that's like more than that used to be, along with that there is lack of motivation. They are not doing the work. Their grades are maybe starting to slip. They are withdrawing from activities that were of interest to them before. Or if they are not participating in even family, dinners or whatever, they are trying to isolate themselves more. All those are like some of the red flags that you should definitely pay attention to, because we know that if you catch these things earlier on, that can, there can be a huge benefit that we can bring in terms of early intervention and early treatment to get this get better quickly. um, Talking openly about mental health, so we certainly are very, focused on, of course, physical health and nutrition and stuff like that. So we have open conversations about that. But even talking about, how, this has been, difficult for you as an adult too, or if you are having a rough day, talking about it, that I'm just having a blah day today. I'm just feeling, sad because, of XYZ circumstances, or the news is making me feel this way. Really, telling them um, that it's okay, like, I mean, I think normalizing, I don't want parents to like freak out and think about like, oh, every little, mention of like I'm feeling nervous or I'm feeling sad or down is something to be worried about. I think we have to keep things into perspective that these are challenging times. Being in a pandemic, not being able to do their normal fun activities, not being able to see their friends, not being able to do some, family fun things that you did before, or go on vacations or whatnot, is a big change. And we all are feeling more down than we have been, and we are nervous and scared for like what's next, and how bad it's going to get, or when is this going to be over. So, you know some of those things are pretty okay to feel, and normalizing that, at the same time keeping an eye on if those are getting more, frequent and deep and more, that's the constant kind of theme in their talk, whatever, like then you should start to kind of maybe think a little bit more whether they need help. um, all the mental health professionals have now adopted teletherapy or telepsychiatry or medicine, basically. So, I've been doing all my sessions on Zoom since March. And, personally, we never thought as mental health professions that we could ever do our practices or do therapy or see patients online. But, thanks to technology, we've been able to still, and there was a recent study that showed that it has been a pretty good result compared to in person. In teletherapy is not bad. Like a lot of the times lot of parents are waiting to, things to open up and then start in-person therapy. I would say, please don't wait for that, because particularly for older kids, they are doing fantastic, on teletherapy kind of format. They've been engaging well, even for younger kids for that matter, depending on, again, kids' personality and temperament. If they're more introvert, they may have a difficulty. But most kids are actually engaging better because they are in their safe space, in their own home, their own room. So they are actually feeling even more comfortable to talk to somebody and share their feelings. So definitely, we reach out to the professionals if you see some red flags. um, Again, go beyond the traditional schoolwork. You know, this is the time to focus also on other skills like independence. Give them, responsibilities, with, helping you make meals or taking care of your pets and doing chores. Encourage physical activity. We know it's really good for both physical and mental health for us to be active. So whatever that format is, if it's family walks, taking the dog for a walk. And then, this is also very important, unstructured time. So again, that does not include screen time, but unstructured time is really important, where you're not like, sometimes some parents feel like, oh, I have to structure their day, so they go overboard and schedule too many things that they can still do within the household kind of setting. But really giving them some unstructured time, because that's the time we can strengthen their creativity and imagination and self-regulation skills as well. And then, of course, trying really hard to maintain healthy peer relationships, because those are critical parts of development, particularly for teens. I mean, not to undermine that younger kids don't, like, they need friends too, but teenage is where peer relationships become such an important thing. And so it's a particularly hard thing for them to not have that. So setting up opportunities that are safe, for any kind of online group projects, or having them, figure out other things appropriately, social distance hangouts, um, things like that, that you can, create little pod for with certain families you feel safe, and certainly, doing it in the safety parameter. I can't emphasize the sleep is such a big building block of our well-being. So, we know that elementary school age kids need about 9 to 11 hours, and middle school and high schoolers need like 8 to 10. And I'm actually, it should be even better, like 8 to 11 also for them. But, we know they have higher demands. And so a lot of those tend to be compromising on their sleep. But this is one thing we can really work on and put our foot down to make sure this is a big resilience building block for them, to make sure they are getting enough sleep. So, again, following the sleep hygiene principles, making sure they're waking up and going to bed at the same time. I can give a whole 1 hour talk on sleep hygiene and sleep, but I can maybe talk more about that in question answer session if people have questions about that. In interest of time, I'll move to the next couple slides before we finish. I want to make sure I'm tracking the time, and we are going to be able to have Q&A as well. And then, this is, of course, a tricky thing to figure out how to manage their screen time. And now that everything is on the screen, what do I do? And so you still have to work on setting those boundaries when you can. So of course, I mean, as an as a parental authority, a lot of the time some parents take very strict measures and say, no, your phone is grounded, you are grounded, whatever. But what seems to really work, based on, again, our work and research findings, is that particularly for older age groups, you need to work through this more compassionately. So really helping them realize that you understand watching this particular show, or talking to your friend, or playing this video game is very important for them. You get it. But at the same time, helping them understand what are some of the downsides of being on screen for so long. before pandemic, this was our policy. How can we modify that and come to kind of a balance in between, or a kind of negotiate and come to some kind of middle ground? So we can think through and find other activities that could be, fun and could be replacing some of the screen time that you're using as, for breaks. Um, and then, um, I mean, a lot of the times parents are worried about what they are doing. They have access to all of this. Of course, I encourage them to make sure you are quite aware of what kind of websites or games or shows, whatever they are watching. And I mean, sometimes, like, I have a teen daughter, so I say, okay, I want to watch that show with you, and that becomes my way of connecting to her also. And it also gives me an opportunity to look into, what is appropriate if she's, watching something inappropriate that I'm concerned about, so I can have that conversation. And then, again, you will be like, as parents, we are doomed. We have to be modeling for everything, right? So we have to also model healthy screen use ourselves. In fact, if you read about research papers, that's the one biggest thing they talk about. They are basically big on, you model a healthy screen use, you set a policy, everybody puts their phones down at 10 o'clock, at a charging station that's away from each one's bedrooms. If you do that, you can actually expect compliance, and then others will follow. And I must say that I have seen it makes a big difference. When I wasn't following it, nobody was following it. When I started it, it made a difference. So I think, it does seem to work if you do it that way. Again, when there's a pushback, I know naturally as parents, our thresholds again are lowered right now with the stress, but really what we know is that if we want this to work in the long run, a more compassionate, empathetic approach works better than a more punitive, punishing kind of approach. You may say you are grounded, you may lose this, you may lose that, and that can be a temporary thing, is what we understand from, again, experience and research studies, that, again, coming to an agreement that this is important, we get it, but, how can we find a middle ground, and how can we make them understand? Because once they understand, most of the times, they work with you. But if you outrightly say no, or not willing to listen to them, or not understanding their point, it doesn't go too far. And so, um, you know I remind this, and this is my deliberate effort to put this slide at the very end, is that if you also, if you don't focus on your mental health, then you are not going to be able to take care of your family's mental health. Like, you are a backbone often. Like, as parents, we are doing a lot, and the children rely on us. So if I am, anxious myself and I'm stressed out, then I'm not going to be able to help others. So really taking time also for your own self-care, being kind and compassionate to your own self, giving yourself a pat on the back because you're juggling so many balls, getting support from other people when you feel like you're stretching and you can't do it all, and that's okay to ask for help and do it safely. And then, remembering that you're not alone in this. There's everybody whose lives become upside down with this whole thing, and so we are all trying to make the best out of it. And so being really gentle about that with your own self also. And then I every slide of mine ends with mindfulness, because that's like my favorite thing, that I cannot emphasize how beneficial that is. This is a little cute, like, self-care bingo for the month that you can, I'm going to email this you guys as well, so you can check off each of those boxes as you're trying to take good care of yourself and feel good about that. Okay, I'm doing something for myself too. And then there's a few mindfulness exercises, fun ones for younger and slightly older kids, that I'll email the handouts for. These are some of the resources. As Anna mentioned, about my nonprofit, the Taarika Foundation. We were fortunate to get a grant from Palo Alto Medical Foundation earlier this year. So we've launched a podcast and a YouTube channel with a lot of educational information, about different topics related to youth mental health. And there is a two-part series. There's a parent series and there is a youth series. And the name of our podcast is Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving. It's available on Apple, Spotify, and Google. It's free, of course. And, you would probably love to, listen to some of those parenting episodes, and even your teens could listen to, or your kids could listen to the youth ones. We've received a really good feedback so far. I have been interviewing some parent experts for some of these episodes, so do check it out. And then our YouTube channel is Supporting the Whole Child, that we launched on World Mental Health Day in October. So I'm actually interviewing in that. I am being interviewed rather, and I've been providing education about each of the mental health issues. So we just finished a series on anxiety disorders, really giving you a 10 to 20 minute quick spiel on what entails when somebody says you have generalized anxiety disorder, your child has that. What does that mean? What to look for? What are the treatments? What is a panic disorder? What is social anxiety disorder, and so forth. So our goal is to, provide education so people can recognize these problems earlier on, so we can get the help that the kids deserve. And here is my email if you have questions, and our website. Our website have tons of mindfulness exercise recordings as well. So there's certainly a resource there. And we also conduct mindfulness groups for teens and kids, different age groups. So we'll be doing one in January also. So if you are interested in getting that information, you can subscribe on our website, and we will be sending out that information to you as well. So with that, thank you. And I can now take the questions.
Dr. Khanzode, thank you very much. This was, I can't tell you how great this was. I think we should have had this like a few months ago. The first question that we have in the Q&A is, how important do you think it is for K-3 grade students to attend in-person schooling? My sixth grader seems to have adapted to online learning pretty well and is relatively happy, although she misses her friends. But my second grader is definitely showing more psychological and social and emotional stress during these times. Do you think that the hybrid learning model will be enough to alleviate these negative impacts? Thank you.
Well, I definitely feel for you. I know as a second grader, your child is rightly being affected by this kind of long haul of online school experience. So what we know is that younger kids actually have shorter attention span, just how their brain is developing, and they're not fully there yet cognitively to be able to sit through an online kind of format particularly. There's also a big need for, developmentally, if you ask me at that age, there's a need for building those, social connections with their peers, and learning a few different kind of milestones we call as cooperative play. Like you start to play together and take turns, and there's like a lot of social skills development that's happening. There's a lot of emotional growth that's happening during those years. So I certainly, agree with you that, or I guess if I was in any kind of capacity to make some, legal decisions, and of course be in a place where I could make this happen, I would get most, or if not all, elementary school year kids back to school. I think those are the kids who really need that additional support, both, just academically and socially. So I know, a lot of the school districts were trying for that. And I know it's even an additional challenge if your kid has additional, disabilities, with learning and stuff, then it becomes even harder.
Great, thank you. The next question is, do you have suggestions about how to meet the teacher's goals if the teacher isn't flexible about her requirements?
Right. So this is a tricky question, I guess. I have to say that I believe in a lot of advocacy work. I do that in my work when it comes to that. So with all due respect, I know teachers are going through their own learning curve, and they have their own, personalities, their own ways of how they teach and what their expectations are. If you are getting a little pushback from the teacher for, some of the requests you may have for your child, or some kind of adapt or modifications or whatnot you're hoping for, then I think it's okay to let them know that you've been not satisfied with this, or you are concerned about this still, and you are going to have to reach the people in the hierarchy, the higher up people, to get the services or the help your child deserves. And it's totally fine to do that. I think as parents, we worry about, I mean, we nobody wants to, you know um, I mean, I think we want to be respectful of teachers as their profession, and where they come from. So it's not like you're undermining that, but sometimes it's not worth at the cost of your child's well-being. If that's getting impacted, if that's lowering their confidence, it's affecting their mental health, then you should raise the matter about them, and try to get the right help.
All right, thank you. One of your tips for supporting distance learning is to focus on building their organizational skills. My son feels that he is being pushed to do this, but he really needs to, and to build it for next year, 6th grade. I can't seem to help him understand that. Any tips?
So, I know it's not easy for every kid to adapt, this kind of skill set. One thing that I often say to the parents is that sometimes we have to let natural consequences happen, and let them fail and fall, and then have them like realize that, oh, if I don't do this, I pay a price. So if you are providing too much of hand holding, and you are doing the organizational work for him, or you were trying to teach him and he's not getting a hang of it, or maybe he thinks that if he didn't do it, you will do it anyways, then that doesn't really enable him to really like take a charge or force himself to learn these skills. So even though it's a harsh method, sometimes you just say, I have taught you what needs to be done, and it's up to you. I'm going to give you this 1 month to try to do it on your own, and let's see how that works. And then sometimes that could be enough to get the motivation for them to follow through, or sometimes they may say, okay, I don't care, and let things slip, and maybe then you can have a conversation that when you didn't do this, this is what happened. Another way to do this would be to I guess use the opposite method of rewarding them for for using the skill set. So even starting at a small, like, okay, let's just focus on this one bit. Every night you're going to pull up your calendar for the next day, and you're going to tell me what's due tomorrow, or something, just maybe one task at a time. And if he or she is able to do it for 1 week, each week you get 1 point. With at the end of the week, you can cash out that by getting an ice cream, or I don't know, like figure out a reward that you're comfortable with, or more one-on-one time with me, or doing this favorite activity with the family, or playing your favorite board game, whatever that might be. So giving them some sense of success, that okay, if I do this, and sometimes to build that habit, you have to like do this, what we call as shaping the behavior. So you kind of reward them at points to shape that new behavior, and that could also help.
Thank you. Another question is, how do you repair the relationship with your child after losing your temper?
Say that again. Sorry, could you repeat the last part again?
So how do you repair the relationship with your child after you've lost your temper?
Okay. So I think, this is a very common, I guess, myth that even as a parent, I have experienced myself, and I've started to believe it, that if I get mad, at my child, and if I had one unpleasant negative interaction, then I've done a lot of damage, and it's kind of gone forever. It's really not like that. I mean, we all have our moments, and you feel bad and you feel guilty about maybe overreacting or saying things you shouldn't have in that moment. But kids are, surprisingly more resilient, of course, than us. And surprisingly, they have very short attention span. And again, depending on the age of the child, um, that they don't really hold on to that, or they don't remember these things as much as maybe we do or we think about. That's one thing. I mean, that's not what the reason should be for you to feel like, oh, I can walk away, with doing anything. But at the same time, I think it's important to know that this is such a great relationship, of all the relationships we have. Your child is connected to you, and there are a number of opportunities for you to have 10 more positive interactions, and this will not matter after that. So, and I also, I own it. I have seen that, if I have lost it and I have felt bad later on, I come back when I'm calm and the child has calmed down, and I own it and I say, sorry, I had a rough moment and I didn't intend to say things that I said, and I'm terribly sorry for making this mistake. But can we start over? What can I do to make this better this time? Or, so so owning it, and trying, because um, it's very beautifully repaired. I have to say that, and you have till age 18 to do that, at least, right? I mean, after that they start to become young adults and a little bit more stubborn and set in their own ways. But uh, for sure you have until 12. I think with current generation I've started to lower the number of how willing they will be to work with you. But there is room and time to do that, and you shouldn't like give up.
I totally agree. Thank you.
Yeah. In fact, in our podcast there is one really great episode on this, repairing the rupture. So if you want to listen to that, there's some really good pearls of advice in that.
Thank you. Another question is how do you think the transition back to normal living will be for children once the vaccination happens? I'm worried about how the unraveling will be and how to process the buildup of all these strong emotions and hardships. How do kids process these things?
Oh yeah. So again, the transition won't be like a smooth transition. It won't be rosy. I think we need to be prepared for that. Just like how the transition to move from in-person to online school was not easy. It was somewhat, rocky, or quite rocky for some people. But we have to keep in mind that, as human beings, that's our strength. We adapt. We definitely are much more resilient in terms of dealing with adverse situations. And in fact, kids are even more so than adults. And so yes, it may not be like, oh, they'll be happy because now they're back at school, this is what they were craving for and wanting. uh, it may be still rough because a lot of the kids who have some maybe little social anxiety or who are shy and introvert, they've been sheltered right now. They've been inside with their family and in their comfort zone. So going back in the real world again and interacting with people could bring up some issues for them. If the social skills have been impacted for kids, so there might be some social skill related issues, and kids may have some social problems with getting back together and try to so I think it's going to be not smooth, but I think we will be able to adapt to it just like we have to this new normal, and it will come back. And I think what we understand is that we all have muscle memory, right? We have those mirror neurons that help us, kind of remember things that we have done before. So as much as it's a transition, and it will be a transition, I think because majority of the kids have spent their most of life in a normal kind of routine of being in-person school and being, in that kind of world, it will come back to them even more naturally. So that will be the hope, that will also help facilitate this process.
I think one of the other big questions is, defining screen time, does that include instructional courses? And then the second caveat to that is, what are some good activities for middle school and high school students to get them off of screen time? Because so many of them want to play Fortnite and some of those other games.
Right. I know that's a tough one. So, before COVID, we would um, not count instructional time into screen time. Um, but now we do count it, because we can't really let go of those 6-8 hours and not count it as screen time, right? I mean, because it's not just the screen time. It's not. Of course, it depends on what you're doing when you're on the screen. So there's an educational, uh, you know, mm, I guess, goal that's being met through the instructional or school time. But our worry is a little bit more than that. I think it's, of course, we are using technology to our use and we are trying to educate our kids. But like I mentioned earlier, the impact of screen time, the blue light that's emitted by these devices, the strain that we are, seeing around, um, you know, uh, physical health with this, with people gaining weight and less movement and eye strain and headaches and the Zoom fatigue. Uh, Plus, we know that screen times do impact your attention span. There's a lot of studies that have talked about that. So, you know, yes, giving them the discount that yes, 6 out of the 10 hours of screen time. So of course, pre-COVID, you were maybe allowing them a 2 hour screen time, thinking, oh shoot, they were spending 6-8 hours of school, and so they could probably do an hour or two per day. And now it's like that 8 hours plus another two or maybe more, because there's less activities that can be done outside of home. So everything comes down back to the screen. But I have to say that you need to get creative. And again, it's like one more thing on your to-do list to do. But we all have to have that screen time too, because we all are working remotely and online, right? So making this as a family goal and presenting it like that versus just presenting it to your child and saying you need to do this, because this is not good for you. I think it's not good for either of us. With their developing brain, it's a little more detrimental to them, more so. But if we all make a conscious effort to, let's say, twice a week we will finish early dinner and we'll play a board game together as a family or watch this show. And again, of course, that comes as a screen time. But if you have a mix and match of, okay, we are going to let you do this, and then giving them joy and fun through other activities, so they don't feel like that dopamine rush that comes from the screen is the only way to feel happy. So spending, since we are forced to be together, spending some time to do some family game nights, um, you know uh, like I said, sometimes you join their video game or join their show and show interest in that, and then share your thoughts, and that becomes a point, and they feel like, okay, they get it, they understand why this is so important to me. And then that gives you the power to negotiate. As far as middle and high school kids, in terms of activities, I mean, I have a ninth grader, and I know girls and boys tend to be different. So I have a daughter. So I have been involving her in helping me with chores in the house, um, picking up a new hobby. Like she used to be into arts and crafts, but then, when she got busy, she didn't have time. So she's picking up some, new projects, like that. Music, like, so some of those classes are still happening. So if your child is interested in music, they can learn their instrument remotely through Zoom. Um, uh, I have also, for some of the um, some of my clients who are boys, they've been doing other activities, like, again, there are a lot of people who've gotten creative with keeping activities online. So like doing martial arts classes, so that, can be, again, I mean, this is, again, we're using a screen to do that, but it's at least giving you a chance to move around and like interact and have a different interface here. And then, a couple of my older high school students have gotten creative themselves, and they've started small like ventures, like they are tutoring younger kids. They are coming together and, doing some community kind of projects. So service to the community can be a focus during such times, right? So this one group of my client, is actually, they started making masks and started to distribute it to the homeless, shelters and things like that. I mean, again, these times could be times where you can see what the need of the hour is and teach them that giving can be a way to feel fulfilled and feel like you can do something about the situation. And so the older teens can be involved in some of these projects. Like, I deliberately chose to do the podcast project because I was like, I want youth to talk and record some of these episodes. So I have like 10 youth who are now engaged in this project of podcast. So they pick up different topics and they talk. So I mean, again, using this time to get creative with what can we do together collectively also for the community. And the older kids really like those types of opportunities. So thinking through that kind of thing, it might be also a good way to do something.
Thank you. As an educator, I teach online reading with 2nd to 5th graders for 45-minute sessions. How often should a child be given a break to help a child concentrate on the material being learned?
For 2nd to 5th graders, you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I would say 3rd to 5th graders actually are okay to do a 45-minute session class, and then they should get at least a 10-minute break between classes. 2nd graders are still a little younger to do a 45-minute. Their attention span is no more than 30 minutes. So I think that's a little much for them to do a 45 minutes class, unless the 45-minute involves not only just academic instruction, but some kind of fun activity and things like that, where they're able to move around and do something. But, yeah, 45 minutes definitely for 4th and 5th, and some 3rd graders can also manage that developmentally. Yeah.
My daughter, an 11th grader, is feeling overwhelmed with homework and assignments and does not get enough sleep. She's tired during the day and takes short naps, and all of her schedule has shifted. Her argument is that she needs to finish the work, so it's become a dilemma at home. How can I help her?
And how old is the daughter, sorry?
11th grade.
11th grade, okay. So she's a junior. And so there's a lot of pushback around getting to sleep on time and getting the right amount of sleep. So, like I mentioned in my presentation, of course, the initial approach could be, or should be, more, coming more, compassionately and understanding what is the need for it, and why does she need her devices, or what is the reason for getting to bed so late. So of course, they will have their own things to say. I was staying up, and that was the time I was chatting with my friend, or I had a lot of homework, or I have a test tomorrow. So of course they have multiple things they will tell you. But I think as a parent, I think you need to be also aware that teens tend to have a little delayed phase of falling asleep. So unlike, us who might be starting to feel sleepy by 9:30, 10, their ability to fall asleep is shifted a little bit more closer after 11 p.m. So some of this is just developmentally how their brain is wired, and they just can't sleep early. But that being said, I mean, having that understanding only helps you to feel like just so you know that it's not all them, that they are trying to, do this intentionally. A lot of this is also somewhat biologically driven. But, if they are sleeping past midnight at 1 and then they have a class at 8 or 9 and they are barely getting like 7 or 6 hours of sleep, then you need to talk about concerns related to how much sleep they should be needing and how much they are getting. And they may say, I'm doing fine in school, what's your problem? They of course have their own ways to justify this. So what I tell parents is to, like, of course you work with them, you negotiate, you find a middle ground. But if there's a lot of pushback after a while, then you don't hesitate to take the steps that you need to as a authority, as their parent, as their well-wisher. And you can do that. You can say that I am really concerned about you not getting enough sleep. I have given you ample of opportunity and choices, and we've tried to work through this, but it seems like you're not able to do it by yourself. Therefore, your dad and I have talked about it, and we've come up with this plan B, which would mean that we will turn off the internet at X time every night, or you will come and put your thing on the charging station or whatever, or we will block certain apps if you want certain access only for homework or certain websites. So I think and again, presenting it in the right way. It's not punitive because they are defying you, and now it's a power struggle and you're trying to win over them, but giving them the right message that because you love them and you care about them, and because you've read this and their doctors and everybody else you've consulted with or who've given you this knowledge tell that it's critical for your child to sleep for X number of hours, and because they are unable to do it themselves because you've tried this, that's why you are now having to do this just to help them get into a good cycle, just for their well-being. And I think some I mean, that's often parents start with that, and sometimes that's not, you're like starting at a wrong note. But if you've tried a few steps and if there's a lot of pushing back and they're not ready, it's totally fine to step up the game and twist their arm a little bit for them to get this new habit formed.
All right, thank you. Another question. What are your thoughts about the models being presented for opening up schools where they will not be in a normal classroom with very little peer interaction? For example, being socially distanced, wearing masks, etc. School at home is relaxed. The new models are highly regimented with no interaction between peers and other classes. Do you think this is going to have a negative impact on kids, that they can see their friends but still cannot just play together?
Yeah. Well, I have, I guess, two perspectives on this. One is my own personal perspective, is that, a large piece of why kids want to be in school is because they want to have that social interaction. And if they're not going to be able to have that, then it is really in some ways pointless to do that. At the same time, if we are looking at this other piece of why the kids go to school, more of our perspective than their perspective of learning, I think the environment and being in the environment and being close to their peers also tends to be a much better format than just seeing them on Zoom. And I think I started to feel like a little better about this only after talking to a few kids in my practice who have gone back in in-person schools. So some of the private schools had opened back up and they were allowed to go in. And they were, of course, following all those protocols of social distancing, masks and whatnot. And the feedback I got from all age groups, I work with younger to like even high schoolers. So was that there was some sense of, I guess, there was, of course, some normalcy that was resumed by having this routine of getting up and going to school. B, it was, they were feeling really good to be back into the classroom and seeing people in person. even though people were, sitting away and they were wearing masks. I think they, at least the kids I worked with, had positive things to say, that still helped them feel more motivated to study. They still felt good about like being in a setup where they were around other people, and the teacher and the instruction seemed more sense to them. So yeah, so I think, it may not be the ideal model, but maybe it's worth trying, I guess. I mean, I can speak for only the few people I've talked to who've gone in a private school setup. I don't know how different this will look in a public school setup.
Yeah.
Another question, the parents instructed not to interfere too much with teachers at the high school level, so the students learn to advocate for themselves. Your suggestions for collaborating with teachers feels uncomfortable in the high school environment, especially when we have no relationship with the teacher.
Yeah, you're right. I think that slide was meant to be for younger kids. So that definitely the expectation from high school students is that they advocate for themselves. That being said, if there is a pushback your child is getting as a high schooler from the teacher, and you're clearly seeing that's impacting them negatively, then it doesn't mean that you can't step in. I think there are times where parents still have to step in, and if you are unable to talk to the teacher, or if the teacher says, it's none of your business, your son has to talk to me, and if you're not getting a well thought response or a desired response, and you're feeling there's some unfairness, or some impact that the child is experiencing, then you can step in. I mean, I've had times where parents have had stepped in, and we support them with letters and stuff to help the school administration help the child. So yes, the focus is to build autonomy and independence and skills for your child to advocate for themselves, so they are ready to do that in the future when they go to college. But it is not like that is the only way to do it. Like, they are still under 18, they are still kids, and you still are the ultimate caregiver who's going to take care of their needs if they are not being met.
Thank you. My almost 11-year-old is becoming more defiant. He does not do his homework. He's always trying to play online game Minecraft, even during school hours, if he thinks no one is watching. This is especially challenging because both Dad and I are working in separate rooms because we have our own office meetings. Any advice?
So, I'm sure you have confronted him or talked about this with him, that, that he's been goofing off and playing on Minecraft while his classes are on. And I'm sure, you've talked about how that's not appropriate and whatnot. And so again, trying to, rather than jumping to a consequence, trying to like first have a conversation about what's going on. Which class does he or she feel tempted to do this in? Is it all the school time, or is it just one particular class? What's happening with that class? What's that class like? What's the teacher like? What are some of the challenges? How are you doing in that class? How is that impacting you? Things like that, I guess. So I mean, first, again, you're trying to understand what's going on, and if it boils down to this is much more fun than listening to that boring teacher, or this class is not of interest for me, or I'm doing fine, I can listen to this other YouTube talk on this, and I can still do fine, and I can manage fine in my schoolwork, my grades are okay. If there is a pushback like that, then you have to step in and say, but we don't think this is a healthy way of learning, this is not the right way of using your screen time. So if you are not able to do that yourself, we would need to set in some controls, and we would need to block that Minecraft thing or whatever needs to happen. So starting at a place where you're trying to diagnose and understand the problem, seeing if you can mutually together find a solution, and if that's not working, then you go to the next level of being a little more strict about it and using your authority.
We're going to just do one more last question. And then if everyone else whose questions were not answered, go ahead and email Dr. Khanzode. But the last question, can you give some examples of some mindfulness practices?
Sure. So, I want to say I can come back and give you a whole, webinar on mindfulness. It's my favorite topic. I did get certified in mindfulness training for kids and teens. So I actually, I'll tell you about a couple fun kid-friendly mindfulness exercises. And so the one that, the couple actually, the ones that I have heard good feedback from kids, they tend to enjoy. One is called mindful eating. I guess pretty much most people know probably what mindfulness is, but just to quickly go over, mindfulness is kind of being in the present and being in this present moment here and now with kindness and curiosity. So you can choose a better response is kind of one way to define it. And so when you are trying to be mindful, essentially that can be practiced in every task you're doing. So mindful listening, mindful talking, mindful walking, mindful eating, mindful, stretching if you're doing yoga. So essentially it essentially means you are really getting back into being in that moment of like when I'm eating, what aroma of food am I smelling? What's the taste like? What's the flavor like? What's the texture like? I'm fully using my senses and my thoughts and my feelings to be in that moment. So mindful eating is really a fun exercise you can do with your kids. So taking a piece of fruit or anything, a cookie or a chip, and then starting with looking at the shape of the food you have, to feel the texture of the food you are having in your hand, to bringing to your nose and smelling if it has any aroma, and then having the first bite and really taking a moment to feel the flavor and the taste and the juices if you're eating a fruit, melting in your mouth, and really appreciating that moment of enjoying this particular sweet fruit or sour thing, whatever you are eating, and then adding some gratitude to that and being thankful for getting this food that you have in your hand. And so this could be done with your snack or even with the first couple bites of your meal. You can easily say, let's take a moment to practice. It takes less than like a minute to do this, honestly, but the idea is to take a break from go, do this, do that, or constant like screen or whatever usage, to be in this moment of you know present, that's telling you to like enjoy this food and get the best nutritional kind of value from it. So that's one. The other one that kids really like is this bubble blowing exercise. So all kids love to blow bubbles, even adults do. I love to do it too. So you blow bubbles, and essentially the way to practice mindfulness is in that is you are taking a moment to really look at the different shapes of the bubble. I mean, they're all round, but different sizes of the bubbles, that as you're blowing them, really bringing all your attention to that experience, that moment. You like look at the size, look at the colors you are seeing within the bubble, see how they are popping, which one's taking longer to pop, which one is taking a lesser time to pop, and doing that for a few seconds with your child and just narrating little story around that. And this exercise often we use to also help them teach, like just like you know those water bubbles, we also have thought bubbles, and kind of teaching them this awareness of about our thoughts, that because the way we think affects the way we feel, and the way we feel affects the way we behave. So just like this practice of bubble blowing gives you this mindfulness moment of being aware of how the bubbles are, and sometimes they are clustered, sometimes they are small and big. Similarly, our thoughts can also come in different thought bubbles, and being aware of what I'm thinking, because that can help me be more in touch with my feelings and then allow me to choose a better response. So there's a few fun things like that for younger kids. You can take a little gem or a small button colored stone or rock, and say, let's pretend this is little boat, and you put it on their tummy, and let's pretend that your tummy is like an ocean. So when you breathe in, your boat rises. When you breathe out, your boat goes down. It's kind of fun. They, for preschoolers and younger age kids, they love that. And then, or you pretend your hands to be flowers. When you breathe in, the flower closes. When you breathe out, the flower opens. And so you can have them do it that way. So yeah, I mean, and then of course older kids can actually do a proper breath based kind of mindfulness exercise, which most of us might have been exposed to. But there are fun ways to do this with your kids. There is mindful listening. So I have a sound bowl that or you can even use something that you can create a little sound with, and tell them to close their eyes and follow the sound that's produced by the hitting that particular instrument. And then when they no longer can hear the sound waves and the sound vibrations, they raise their arms and open their eyes. So that's also a nice way to train that attention muscle and help them with mindful listening.
Dr. Khanzode, this was a great session. This was just great insight and important information. And thank you so much for your time. We will close this webinar, and I invite all of their Spanish speaking parents to our next Parenting in a Pandemic speaker event, which is next Wednesday, December 9th. And it is at 7 p.m. and it's entitled Viviendo durante la pandemia con Lilian Alfaro Kavlan. So again, thank you, Dr. Khanzode. You did wonderful. This was great information. And to everyone, have a good night. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me again, and everyone stay safe and healthy, and good night. Take care.
Oh.